I see it started now.
Okay. Okay.
Alrighty, let me quickly share my
All right.
screen.
Good morning, all of you. Good afternoon from wheresoever you have joined. Thank you so much for joining in. You're rightly making use of the extra day of the year. Yeah. So thank you for joining into the third session and the last session of this Power Pack Thursdays. And I'm sure, we all learned together and definitely we will take it forward as well. So, the third session, last but not the least, and the most important one, we have Power Automate to be offered by Sana Nazair. So, let us understand what best we can make ourselves best with the solutions that we have in store for Power Automate. Yeah. Now, again, thank you for joining it right from the first session to the last session. I have a lot of questions asking in terms of the record. I mean, sharing the recording. I would definitely do it once we are done with the third session. Plus, I would also request you to fill in the feedback form and give your comments and interest and insights. Basis that we will reach out to you individually, trying to discuss with you on the use cases and take it forward. We are here to help you with you know the to help you with the power platform solutions. Yeah, so please try to give the feedback forms. All right, so without any further ado, I would hand it over to Sana to to unlock the Power Automate for us. Thank you, Sana.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction, Jyoti. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and spending your 1 hour with us. Hopefully, you've been attending some of our previous sessions and you already know that we are at our session 3, which is all about automation with Power Automate. So we'll try to kind of do a bit of a recap of the last 2 sessions. Hopefully, you've attended the first session. If not, feel free to go through the recordings. Jyoti will be sharing all of that with us after our series finishes. We talked about how we could leverage Power BI for the larger data strategy of our organization, as well as how easy it is to actually use a tool like Power BI to do data analysis for your day-to-day work. And then your second session, which was hosted by my colleague Meredith, talked all about Power Apps and Power Pages. So focusing on the idea of how do we do low-code development and how do we create our own apps without having to wait for, let's say, the IT for months and months. And how would we create things like external-facing websites. So today's session, which is all about automation again, Power Automate, we'll be focusing a lot on, okay, we have a bunch of different business processes in our organization. Is there a way for me to automate those processes? And is there a way for me to actually find out also, are there any processes we have in the organization which have potential to be automated? Um, with that, let's get started with our session, easy automation. For our agenda today, we do have a few topics we'll cover. I'll try to build the story around all of these topics, but just to give you a quick overview of what we'll talk about through this 1 hour, we'll start off with kind of building on our understanding from the last 2 sessions on how Power Platform actually can enable digital transformation for a lot of organizations. And we know how significant and how important digital transformation is these days, no matter what industry you belong to actually have that edge over your competition and improve efficiency, reduce costs, pretty much all of those problems that organizations have these days. Then we'll focus on what automation is and how it actually helps overcome some of the challenges we have. Um, Moving from there, we'll talk a little bit about Power Automate, which is Microsoft's solution for automation. Of course, there are other products out there in the market, but we'll also tell you why you should be thinking about Power Automate and what are some of the benefits that or some of the um, added features and capabilities that you might not find elsewhere. Um, then comes my favorite part of the discussion, which is all about AI and all of this buzz around AI that we keep hearing every day. How do we actually start infusing artificial intelligence into our automation pipelines? And from taking that conversation to the rest of the solutions we've talked about as well, like Power BI or Power Apps or my public facing websites, how can I start infusing the power of AI into all of these applications that we build? I'll also walk you through a quick demo of how do you create all of these automation solutions in Power Automate, and you'll see how easy again it is to do. And then finally, we'll do a bit of an overview of Power Automate licensing. Again, don't worry about the licensing component. I think the highlight here is that uh, most of us might already have these capabilities available to us. It's just that we haven't consumed them yet. And again, you have Microsoft at your service. All of you have uh, points of contacts within Microsoft, so they can always help you deep dive into these conversations more. With that, let's get started with our conversation. Now, on your screen, you see some numbers around how significant the digital demand these days is. The reason we want to think about these numbers is because this demand is expected to just keep on increasing in the future. And it's something that's expected, right? Our world today runs on digital scenarios. We do our day to day work, especially in the tech industry, we do our day to day work on digital products. We leverage digital services which are diverse. There are a lot of different digital services available out there. And more often than not, we are using products that are across a range of different providers as well. So thinking about the next 5 years, thinking about the strategy of your organization, it's important to keep these numbers in mind and think about what is our opportunity here to scale up, to make sure that our organization is future ready and the solutions we create are future ready, instead of us having to redevelop or redesign or re-implement something that we have already done. And within this digital demand, there's a high expectation of automation as well. And I think one of the questions my customers ask me often is, because there's been so much buzz around AI these days, is AI actually going to take away the work we have, or is it going to replace our jobs? I think the biggest thing to understand there is that AI is just an assistant. It will never replace human creativity or human intelligence. It's a byproduct of our own intelligence. So what it can, however, do is augment your work, support you with taking away those mundane parts of your job, which things like none of us likes writing emails, right? We don't want to write long emails. But if we have like an assistant that can do that for us, makes our life so much more easier. And we can actually focus on the things which are more important to us, which are more creative, strategic, and worthy of decision making. Before I digress into the AI side of things, I think the key point I want to highlight here is within this surging of digital demand, there is definitely a huge demand for automation of tasks that are mundane, repetitive, and potentially do not add a lot of value to strategy or to decision-making processes. And at the same time, we've also seen the trend that there are never enough developers to to create these solutions and products for us. There's always the sense of IT having huge workload, IT teams and ops teams having this huge demand from the business for, okay, build me this report, build me this application. And it takes months and months to execute those projects, which is where the whole idea of Power Platform comes from, is this idea of enabling people in your organization who probably are not developers by trade, but they do have the capacity and the capability to know their business, know their subject, know what they are doing, and being able to enable them for creating their own applications, creating their own automation, creating their own solutions, which actually help them with their day-to-day role. So that's one of the some of the numbers that you see on your screen, some of the research that is out there in the world, in case you want to read more about it. And as a solution to these problems, we have to think about how do we empower our business and our frontline workers? How do we reduce the workload on our IT admins? How do we reduce the workloads on our professional developers? Which is where the whole scenario of Power Platform comes into the picture. Now, hopefully, some of you have at least attended our last couple sessions. We've actually covered a bunch of these products in our sessions, including Power BI, Power Apps, Power Pages. And our focus today will be talking a little bit more about Power Automate. Power Virtual Agents, which is not part of this series, but is another product that you can go out and explore. And it's kind of become this home for your Copilot Studio these days. You can actually create your amazing human language understandable chatbots and plug them into applications across your organization, making, again, your day-to-day life a lot more easier. Um, whether that's in the form of application development, whether that's in the form of extending your line of business systems, whether that's in the form of empowering your professional developers or enhancing your employee experiences. There's a lot of value Power Platform actually unlocks. And this is not just me saying this stuff, it's actually proven through a lot of customer work we have done. I'll talk about a few customer case studies in our session today, but and you might have heard Meredith talk about some case studies with some of our public customers using Power Apps and Power Pages, or in my first session, I talked about Power BI. I think it's important to understand that these are real world applications that are actually being built out there right now, and they are saving organizations a lot of money, a lot of labor, a lot of effort, a lot of time. So whatever use case and application you can think what scenarios can be leveraged within your organization to create to leverage Power Platform. And as I was mentioning before, a lot of you might already have access to Power Platform because it comes with a lot of the embedded capabilities of Microsoft. Um, but you might just not have heard of it or not know how to use it or know that there is this amazing product available to me. So tapping into that is why we are doing this series, and hopefully we'll have some more conversations with you in a deeper dive on how you can leverage it. Okay. As I was mentioning, through proven case studies, through our work with our customers, we've realized that Power Platform is absolutely the right tool for this job of low code development with our citizen developers. It helps improve employee experiences because it empowers your employees who may not be traditionally developers, but they can get their own work done by themselves without having to wait months and months in lines for some time with some developers. It actually absolutely helps you reduce your costs as well in terms of development because you don't actually have to go out and hire new developers um, to manage your workload, or you don't have to spin up these huge infrastructures to create your production workloads. Instead, you can leverage the existing infrastructure that comes with these solutions. So it's one of the best tools out there in the market for sure. And if you do want to, again, talk a little bit more about it with us, feel free to kind of get in touch with Jyoti, fill out that feedback form, and we can have more deep dive conversations. I think one of the other big things or USPs of Power Platform is its capabilities around governance and security. Now, the philosophy here at Microsoft is we embed security and governance at the heart of every product. It's not something that you do once you have completed development and then you think about, okay, how do we make this solution secure? It's something that should start at the heart of your development. It should be the first thought you have when you start designing your solutions for production. So given that Power Platform is part of this family of Microsoft and Azure and all of these amazing tools and capabilities that Microsoft has, uh, all of these governance and security controls are kind of embedded into the products. So it also reduces a lot of the overhead for you thinking about, okay, I need to now secure this solution. What are the tools I should be using? How do I set up identity, authorization? Who gets to access this capability? What level of permissions do we need to manage? A lot of that comes pre-managed for you. Um, and it's always state of the art controls and capabilities. So, definitely another thing to keep in mind, especially given that all of us work in organizations that have proprietary data, there's always PII or personally identifiable data that we handle and we work with. So, leveraging this idea of governance and security, another very important feature that Power Platform offers. Okay, with that, let's dive into one specific aspect of Power Platform, which is this idea of automation. So before we start talking about it, I think I had a quick poll I created for all of us just to get a sense of the room and see if we think there are capabilities or avenues of automation in our organization or in your day-to-day work, for example. Because personally, when I'm doing my day-to-day work, I do see that there's a lot of things I can actually automate on a daily basis, like submitting my expenses or filling out my timesheets, things that I probably don't need a lot of mental stamina on my end, but that is something that is important and needs to be get done. So automation there makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to quickly launch this poll, which you should see on your screen, and let's get a quick sense of the room to see if we think automation is something that we can leverage.
I love this question, Sana. This question always keeps me going. Like, can someone help me do automate my
I
tasks?
know
Yeah,
there's so much we can automate, and I think that's the
so
beauty of these
much. The
solutions.
potential is just so huge. It's just that our brain needs to think a lot.
True, true. Okay, and I think our audience actually agrees with us, Jyoti. I'm just looking at the poll
Oh, I love
results.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
95% as of now, which is like,
95%, yeah, which is a
no
huge
wonder
amount.
all of us are on the same page.
Yeah. I mean, we all have similar jobs, right? All of us working in the tech industry, all of us going through
Absolutely.
the same pains.
I know.
But yeah, I think there's huge chunks of our work, our day-to-day tasks, which are probably not creative tasks, but they are tasks that are important to get done. And often that is your sweet spot for things that should be automated.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and those who clicked on maybe, you're at the right session at the right time. Because you will
Cool.
also agree with us, okay, by the end of the today's
Hopefully.
session.
All right. Okay. So, interesting that nobody has said no. So we have a 90-10 split between yes and maybe. Awesome. All right. Let's continue our conversation from there then. As you all probably already know in your day-to-day work, we as humans excel at thinking. That's our primary purpose, right? We all want to think, we want to strategize, we want to plan. We are much more creative in our day-to-day work or in our lives than having to do things that are much more mundane or repetitive or manual tasks. In terms of something as simple as submitting our expense claims, we don't want to look at a certain receipt we had and then input data numbers into an Excel sheet and then upload that somewhere. It goes for an approval. Not a very optimized process, right? Uh, Ideally, it would be so much better if I would just have, let's say, an app that I upload my receipt to, and it automatically strips out all of the data, goes through a workflow approval process. My manager looks at it, they approve the expense, and all of the things that are sort of cascading from that one action automatically go through the pipeline. And I don't have to worry about, okay, I need to ping my manager, I need to get an approval. Um, so for us to be able to focus more of our time on creative and strategic thinking, we want to go through the process of someone performing these repetitive and manual tasks for us, which is where automation is such a huge sort of point of value that we can tap into. And again, this is our lived experiences, and at the same time, there's a lot of research around this as well. Uh, with the advent of COVID, even before that, we had so many different remote workers. We always work in settings that are much more global now. You have different systems operating in different settings. You have different geographies having different systems. Or even if we are a smaller organization, there's always the need to share information across each other. There's always the need to have certain processes embedded into our organization. At the same time, there's the workload or the more of the creative side of things, excuse me, is increasing day by day. There's much more expectations from our customers, from our stakeholders in terms of what they want from the kind of work we are doing, which is why tapping into productivity is a really big value point in this era of being knowledge workers. So, how do we actually do more work with the time we have, or how do we actually do more valuable work with the time we have to kind of meet those needs of our customers and have satisfied, happy customers, whether that's customers in the form of our bosses, our internal stakeholders, or our external customers, like we have here in this setting. So, a lot of these different challenges can be supported or can be sort of reduced by the power of automation. And again, we did this sort of study with McKinsey, which you can see some numbers on your screen, how much automation can actually help in increasing productivity, in reducing the time we need to actually get to the outcome we are trying to achieve, in how much it can unleash innovation in our workforces. So if you do get rid of those mundane day-to-day tasks, there's more time, more freedom for you to do your best thinking, to do your strategic thinking. And again, all of these things that I'm saying are backed by these studies, backed by a lot of research and data out there in the world. Um, And of course, all of us being organizations that are doing business, it's also one of those places which has a huge market share. It's a very growing business. Automation software market actually grew by almost 63% just from 2019. And that's a huge market to tap into. At the same time, it's one of the fastest growing segments in the enterprise software market, meaning whether you use Power Automate or not, it is one of those things that is going to impact the way you work eventually. So tapping into it when it's relatively new, although I wouldn't say it's new at this point, but when it's relatively new to your organization, maybe is a good way to kind of help your peers, help your teams, help your organization to kind of take that next step in their digital transformation journey. So while we've talked about the significance of digital transformation, significance of this idea of automation, Microsoft's solution to this problem is something we call as Power Automate. It's a product that is part of the Power Platform family. Again, we've been saying this so many times over the last few sessions, you're probably tired of hearing it by now. But Power Automate is this kind of tiny product in the big family of Power Platform and then in the bigger family of Microsoft, which allows you to tap into automation by leveraging very simple drag and drop controls. If you remember from my first session and from Meredith's session, we kind of talked about the vision or the goal or the motto of this Power Platform family is to enable citizen developers, which means people are subject matter experts. They know the work they're doing. They've been in the work that they're doing for years and years. You might be a procurement specialist. You might be a supply chain specialist. You might be working in the banking industry and trying to decide whether someone should get a loan or not. You know your subject matter, but you might traditionally not be developers. And how do you, as a subject matter expert, actually tap into the capabilities of technology to reduce the workload you have in your day to day or just make it more efficient? This is where the Power Platform vision or Power Platform goal is. So Power Automate kind of feeds into that vision by providing this drag and drop interface, very easy, very quick to use interface that allows you to automate a lot of processes. And it's kind of this single platform for something we call as hyper automation. Now, it might seem like an intimidating term. What is hyper automation? But it basically talks about the idea of yes, we want to do automation, but how do we even know what we need to automate? So the process or the journey of automation doesn't just start from okay, I need to automate this single process, but it can actually go to the depths of understanding your entire business, mining for processes that actually can be automated and free up your workers' time. So it requires the use of multiple technologies, tools, and platforms. But the good thing is that Power Platform and Power Automate in itself actually supports all of these scenarios. Meaning, if I know what I want to automate, I can just jump onto Power Automate and create a quick automation flow. If I don't know what to automate but I do want to leverage automation capabilities, I can use the process mining capabilities of Power Automate and jump into finding what are some of the business processes or what are some of the tasks I do in my day to day that can actually be automated. And then on the other side of it, you have there might be some processes that are probably not using cloud sources or are not so easy to automate. So maybe you just want to replicate a bunch of steps on your desktop. Because you perform those steps every day in and day out, you know what those steps are. You just want someone to track those steps for you and create a process out of it. That's also possible. So Power Automate is this combination of different capabilities that allows it to tap into this idea of hyper automation, meaning anything automation you can think of, think Power Automate. Which is essentially what you see on this next slide here, whether that's the process of discoverability, which is generally the first stage of thinking about automation, or it's this idea of actually automating things, whether that's automating things in the cloud or automating things across your Microsoft product family, or it's automating things around other third-party capabilities as well. And then orchestrating that at an organization-wide scale. So with making sure you have the right governance tools in place, making sure you have appropriate policies in place, and not having to worry about the backend infrastructure. So you don't need to set up an always running server, for example, for that process to keep running. and then eventually extending that out into the rest of the solutions that are out there as well. For example, yeah, I'm creating some automation capabilities. Maybe I've created a workflow that takes some expense claims or takes a PDF of a certain receipt I want to submit for an expense claim, pulls out all the information from that, and then puts it into, let's say, a certain SharePoint list I've created, or a backend SQL Server database that I have, whatever your data source might be. But what do I actually do with that then? Can I use that data for something else? Absolutely. I can probably use that data for a Power BI report to see how is the procurement in an organization working? How many expense claims got submitted over a certain period of the year? What is the trend like for our expense claims? That could then help you make your decisions about, okay, maybe we need to increase the budget of how expensive of a laptop our workers can buy, or maybe we need to reduce that budget. So it's not just to the point of Power Automate and automation. You can actually leverage these solutions and extend them out into these large scale systems and solutions as well. And we'll see a couple examples of this as we are talking through our session. Now, again, I don't want to keep tooting our own horn, but Power Automate has been one of the leading solutions in the space of automation for a long time now. It's been a product that's been in the Power Platform family uh, for for a decade almost, and it's one of those solutions that keeps refining, keeps getting more features and capabilities and updates. So it is one of the definite market leaders out there. You will see. So one of the stories I wanted to share with you is from this customer called Komatsu, which is a manufacturing customer for us here in Australia. And they actually wanted to sort of develop modern infrastructure, go through this whole journey of digital transformation that we've been talking about since 3 weeks now. And they had a bunch of their frontline workers who needed a few different processes that they wanted to automate. And how did that actually impact them? They leveraged Power Platform family and Power Automate, obviously. And how did that actually help them improve their productivity? Uh, Big numbers here on your screen. There was a 99% accuracy in actually reading invoices that their workers were submitting. There were more than 300 plus hours per year saved on just invoice processing, which is one single process in our organizations, right? And it took them like 4 weeks to actually build this solution and put it into production, which is a very, very short amount of time. And we know how important these solutions are to us these days, and how much of an impact they can have on how good our organization is performing. So having that edge, having that competitive edge in the market, very important. And then we have another story of our other customer, which is one of the second largest banks in Netherlands, so more in the financial services industry. And honestly, Power Automate is one of the really big solutions out there for the financial services industry because we have a lot of processes embedded in an industry like that. So as part of their digitization strategy, they adopted Power Platform, wanted to streamline some processes, also built up something we call as a center of excellence to enable their administrators and their stakeholders to keep an eye on Power Platform and have that governance umbrella over their solutions. So as you can see, again, some big numbers on your screen. This is a real world case study. You can actually go and find some of this information on our public blogs. There were more than 2,500 apps that were built by their citizen developers. And again, keeping in mind, these are people who had no idea about coding, who probably were never programmers, but they were subject matter experts. They knew their job, they knew their roles, they knew what they wanted to achieve. And just from there, they kind of pushed out this amazing technology out there, and were able to get so much more time and productivity within their day-to-day life. So all of that goes to say there's a lot that can be uncovered with Power Automate and with the larger family of Power Platform. It's just a matter of knowing what we want to achieve, what is our outcome, and maybe just talking to your Microsoft representatives. Okay. Now, our next piece of conversation is about, yeah, all of this is fun and good. When do we talk about AI? I know that AI is one of those things that everyone wants to talk about these days, but AI Builder, or the capability for AI in Power Platform, has been there since before ChatGPT days. So it's an old feature for us at this point of time. What AI Builder does is it's kind of this pre-built set of AI models or pre-built set of AI capabilities you can use within Power Platform. What does that mean? So remember, I was giving you this example of maybe I have an app and I upload my invoice to that or a receipt to that, and I just want it to submit my expense claim to my organization automatically. So how does an app actually read a receipt? That's a human capability. How does my app know what I've written? Maybe it's a handwritten receipt, or maybe it's a digital receipt, but there are some elements that are probably not very clear for it to understand. That's where your AI capabilities come into the picture, hence the term artificial intelligence. So if you embed your applications with the capability like reading a receipt or extracting information from a receipt, putting it into another data storage, rather than someone manually having to do that, there's a lot of such capabilities in Power Platform, which are kind of embedded in there. Again, this is not something you have to create. You don't have to create your own models. You don't have to understand how does a machine read a picture. You don't have to write code and long models and algorithms for this. It's all embedded into the product. And the really cool thing is that AI Builder is a capability you can use across all of the different products in Power Platform. Meaning, if I want to do automation and within automation, maybe I need to translate my receipts into another language. How would I do that? I would use AI Builder. I would just pick up that information, put it into AI Builder. It translates into whatever language is appropriate for me or my organization and pushes my pipeline forward. Similarly, you could have this AI Builder capability in, let's say, Power Apps or an app you've created so that it can actually take a picture of your receipt and read the receipt and extract the information from there. So AI Builder is this underlying capability that's available across Power Platform. And similar to everything else in Power Platform, it's very easy to use, very drag and drop, very user friendly. Because again, we're trying to enable everyone in the world to be able to use this technology. It shouldn't just be siloed within our IT teams or increase this huge workload on our IT teams to build everything and anything in the organization. Now, I kept this one slide here because it's a very good slide for understanding the sort of the machine learning and AI landscape of Microsoft, because there's just so much out there, right? No one can remember and know everything. Even I don't think I remember and know everything that Microsoft has. But there's a large family of products. Now, the way that I think of this, or the way that is very easy for me to understand and remember, is there's a front layer of services or the top layer of services where everything is pre-provided. I don't need to worry about anything. Something like your Microsoft Outlook, or something like your Word application or your Excel application. All of these are SaaS capabilities. So all of this has the backend infrastructure. Everything is pre-built for me. My job is just to use it. So there are AI capabilities embedded into this topmost layer, which is your application layer. And you probably have been hearing a lot about this because these AI capabilities got improved with the enhancement of Copilot. So a lot of Copilot is being embedded into this application layer. But if you want to go a layer deeper, maybe you don't want to build the code from scratch, but you probably want to customize things like, okay, I don't want to translate from English to French. I want to translate from English to Hindi. How do I configure that? How do I make those changes? Or I'm building my own application. Can I add some sort of AI into this at the very high level, low code level? This is where your Power Platform comes into the picture. And Power Platform comes with AI Builder. So this is your low code capability for building AI or for embedding AI into your applications. And then there's the deeper layer where you have Azure AI services, or we call them cognitive services. But think of this as your Azure bucket, or this is your absolutely ground level at the root base level of building your own models and capabilities. So this is where your developers, your data scientists would come into the picture and create their own stuff. So think of it in like three layers. You have your completely code developer friendly applications. You have your middle, which is your low code capabilities, essentially Power Platform. And then you have the application layer where you're not exactly developing anything, you're just using pre built AI within your applications. Our focus, though, will be on the AI builder component of it today. Okay, now what does AI builder actually offer? Um, there's a few different things that come out of the box with AI builder, and there are some pre-built models that it leverages. Models like that are specific to document related tasks, like you want to recognize text or read text from something, or you want to process forms and structures and put all of that data that comes into those forms potentially into some sort of storage, or you're digitizing your paper based forms, for example, or you're processing some sort of documents like passports or driver's licenses, or you're trying to read business cards. Anything related to those document based processing kind of can be put into this bucket of document processing. Um, then you have language based tasks, like you're trying to do a translation from one language to another, or you're trying to pull out the sentiment from, let's say, you sent out a survey form to your customers, like we are doing, Jyoti and I are doing. We're sending you some feedback. If we get some feedback, we can try to extract the sentiment of whether you liked our session or did not like our session, so positive or negative sentiment. Or we want to understand what language you are using to give us the feedback. All of those kinds of tasks, again, there are some pre-built models that you can leverage. And then there's image-based and structured data-based models as well. We'll take a look at it from the interface itself. I think that will be a bit more helpful for us to understand. But I guess before we continue with that, probably let me see what the room thinks in terms of what our knowledge of AI stands at currently. And this is just to get, again, a quick sense of the room, to understand how you would rate your understanding of artificial intelligence, or AI as we call it. Okay, see if I can see how we are doing in terms of our results. Okay, that's a good number. I think we're at about 3.6 as an average number, which is great. So potentially we're somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. We probably have heard of AI. We might have built some applications. We know what this capability essentially entails, which is great. Thank you for responding to that. Uh, okay, I think a follow-up question to that from me would be just this one that you should see on your screen now, just to get a sense of how excited we are about AI. So hopefully some of us are at least want to build AI capable applications, and are kind of excited about what this technology can do for us. Um, Let me just quickly see where we are. Okay, interesting answers. I'm glad to see we're not getting any no's in the sessions, which is awesome, meaning that we do want to try out all of these amazing technologies. All right. I think we're about at a 70-30 split of yes, we do want to build AI capable applications. It's about 70% split there, just trending up to 75, and then a 25% split of maybe we want to do that. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you for participating, everyone. All righty. Let's continue our conversation then. And feel free to keep adding to the poll as you see. All right. Now with AI Builder, we've been talking about this capability. And as I mentioned, it kind of sits into two parts. There are some models that are kind of pre-built for you. You just have to configure them and, let's say, add them to an automation pipeline or put them in an app. So those would be your pre-built AI models that come out of the box. But there are some models you can customize as well a little bit. For example, there's a pre-built model for reading invoices, but maybe your organization does your invoices in sort of a custom structure. They have their own way of creating invoices, which is probably not the standard way that others in the industry do it. So, what do I do in such a scenario? Maybe my pre built model is not performing so well, it's not able to read all the data. In such a scenario, I do have the capability to tap into customizing my model a little bit, which means I can teach my model to recognize my data rather than knowing all of the data out there in the world. So it's as simple as providing it, let's say, a few PDFs of your receipts and teaching it where everything is. And as soon as you do that, giving it just 5 samples, it actually learns how to read your receipts. And then it's able to give you a much better performance on downstream on your applications and in your workflows in terms of, okay, I'm able to read things correctly. So that's another very interesting thing with AI Builder. There's the opportunity to customize some of these pre-built models as well. And there's a lot of different common use case scenarios we've seen our customers build with these capabilities, whether that's through the custom AI models or it's through the pre-built models. You have things like calculating customer churn, predicting whether a customer will continue buying from you or not, whether you want to classify images in your image data, or maybe you are a retail store and you're trying to identify and do inventory and identify how many items or how many units of a certain item do we have left on a shelf by just clicking an image of the shelf. Or if it's classifying documents or different document types in your organization, or it's actually invoice processing and automating your entire manual documentation process. All of those different kinds of scenarios are possible with your Power Platform solutions. And at the same time, with AI Builder, you can kind of infuse those AI capabilities in as well, all in the form of drag and drop interfaces and low code capabilities. So we're not actually still writing any extensive code or needing to learn everything about machine learning before we start using AI. Okay, with that, I think I've been talking for a long time, so hopefully you got at least 50% of that. Let's jump into our Power Automate homepage and our application itself and see what are these capabilities that I'm talking about. Okay, so for those of us that probably have not seen used Power Platform, Power Automate, Power Apps before, or we don't know where these applications sit in the Microsoft family, there is, of course, URLs you can navigate to, but you can always use this sort of waffle icon in your Microsoft application. So if you open up your Outlook, for example, Outlook for Web, it will have this waffle icon next to it. And you can use these options here to actually explore all your apps. Now, one of the apps we have is called the Power Automate app, and it's also available at the URL make.powerautomate.com. You do need an organization account to log in, meaning you should have some sort of an organization credential. It's not something you can access from your personal accounts. But anyways, apart from those prerequisites, this is what our homepage actually looks like. There's a bunch of different tabs on the left-hand side. And now that we have Copilot, you can actually see the Copilot capabilities on your home screen. So you can, I guess, as a starting point in your journey, just ask Power Automate using these Copilot capabilities of, can you create me a flow that copies all the rows from an Excel file to another Excel file with just the click of a button? Or every month, can you copy all the files from this particular OneDrive folder to another particular OneDrive folder that I have? Or whenever I create a new item in SharePoint, can you send me an email that a new item has been created there? So using these examples or thinking of your own examples, you can actually just type out your question here, hit the generate button, and Copilot will auto create these capabilities for you. So that's absolutely amazing. It's mind-boggling to me sometimes that we can do these things. But if we go the traditional way, there's actually these options for creating stuff. This is your playground or your sandbox for creating new workflows. And a workflow or a Power Automate workflow is just a bunch of steps. If I show you one of the workflows I have, which basically is a workflow for something as simple as a purchase approval, meaning we had some new joinees in our organization. They need to buy a laptop. Maybe we give them 2 or 3 options. And now that purchase approval needs to go through a certain process. Now, what I've used here is just a 4-step process, which goes one by one, meaning when this step happens, then this step happens, then this step happens, and then this step happens. It's as simple as that. And that's how our processes work, right? We have a step-by-step process, and at every step, you want to do something. So in my scenario, or in this sample flow that I have, hopefully my screen is big enough for you to see, is in my certain SharePoint list, whenever someone creates an item, I want to start an approval chain for that item creation process. Maybe I want to keep my SharePoint list as a secure data source, and anyone and everyone should not be able to add data to it. So we've set up an approval on top of it. And this data source could just as easily be an SQL server, or it could be a third-party instance, or it could be ServiceNow, whatever third-party applications you might be using. This is just an example of me picking up SharePoint. So I've created an approval, and approvals are one of the most common scenarios we have in our organizations, right? There's always something that approval needs to go for. And it's more often than not a manual process. You have to reach out to someone, you have to check, you have to send them the details, you have to attach certain things for them to approve, you have to give justifications. How cool would it be if we could just automate that process? And that's exactly what we've done here. We've used something called the approval process or the approval step, which basically creates an approval, waits for the approval decision from whoever the stakeholder is. Maybe my manager needs to approve it, or maybe someone in the IT department needs to approve it, or maybe someone in the finance department needs to approve it, whoever that might be. It waits for their approval decision, and then based on the decision, it takes a few steps. Sends out an email to the request creator that, yeah, your request has been approved or it has been rejected. These are the reasons it was rejected. All of that sort of standard approval processes we can think of in our organizations. And if I trigger this workflow, I'll show you how simple that is to trigger. Is this is my backend SharePoint list that I'm actually using for this workflow. So this is the trigger. If someone creates a new item here, that workflow for me gets triggered. So let's test this. Don't worry about all of the steps I'm taking here. I just want to show you the application of these tools, building them and how we would build them. Again, deeper conversations for us to have. Feel free to reach out to Jyoti, fill that form, and we'll help you create all of these artifacts. So let's say someone created an item on that SharePoint list, and now I want to see if this process actually works or not. Now, when that item actually got created, so the trigger process happened, an approval gets generated, an approval gets created. And that approval email actually goes to someone. That someone is who is going to approve or submit or reject. So in this scenario, in the example scenario, I'm the person that the approval is coming to. So I'm going to go check my Outlook and see if I got an email. Let's just refresh our Outlook, because that's what I've set up my approval process to be. This could just be as easily a Teams message as well. Maybe you want to interact over Teams and you want to have your approvals over Teams. That's possible too. Okay, this is probably taking a few minutes. And there we go. I got my new device request. And I can see that this has been requested by this person, their email ID. This was when the date was created. This is the link to what they have done, what they're seeking an approval for. Do I want to approve it or do I want to reject it? So up to me. And within here, I can see that my process is actually waiting for that approval decision. So it's not automatically going to take a step. It will wait for the step that it is supposed to wait for. So in this case, let's say I approve that. And I say approved your request for device. And I hit my submit button. And voila, my process here should run beyond this point. And I can see that the approval decision process has happened as well. Now, again, because this is a sample scenario, that decision and confirmation email is also coming to me, meaning I get a confirmation like this one that, hi, XYZ, this is an email to confirm your recent request for this has been approved. Many thanks, so on and so forth. So very simple example of an approval, but that's how your Power Automate actually runs. And if I show you how this process was created or how this model was created, it's as simple as adding a step to your process. Maybe after getting this email, I want to do another action. I want to send a message in Teams as well. So I can add a step, look for Teams connectors. I can see there are some Teams connectors available here. Um, let's see if we have a message option. Okay, so I can post a card in a chatter channel. Okay, I want to do that. And it will automatically post that into whatever Teams channel I choose, whatever thing I choose. And while we are doing this, I think it's again important for me to highlight that uh, governance and security is at the heart of all of this. Meaning, just because I can create a connector here, which allows me to talk to Teams, doesn't mean I can talk to anyone's Teams or I can post in any channel out there in my organization. Your permissions filter to what you have access to. So that's the other beauty of it. You don't have to worry about permissions, they're kind of pre handled for you. All right. Okay, I'm going to do a quick check of time. I see I'm almost hitting the end. But yeah, hopefully that gave you a bit of an overview of what Power Automate looks like. There's actually a lot you can do. This is the most basic example I could show you. Um, and what I'll show you on top of this is how I've actually integrated this process into a device ordering app. So if some of you were not in last week's session, this might be new to you. Don't worry. If you were, you might recognize that this is a Canvas app. What I've done is I've actually automated a process of device ordering in my organization. We always have new people joining, and we need to kind of have a workflow of they order a new device. They have two or three options. Which one do they want? How does the workflow trigger? Who gets to approve it? So on and so forth. So thinking that I am one of the new joinees at your organization, for example, and I open up this app, I look at what are my options for the different devices I can order in my organization. I have a bunch of different options here. Let's say I find that this option here and the other option are good for me. I want to compare their features and see what differences they have. I'm going to go ahead, compare them. I can see all of the details. I can pick and choose which one I want to order. And maybe I want to order this one, Aspire S3. I just hit the submit device request and my request gets submitted. And this is just first step of the pipeline. Once this device request actually gets submitted, it triggers my flow again. Why? Because I've embedded my flow in there, meaning this device request will actually flow through to someone's email who gets to confirm and reject that request. And then you can actually build on top of these solutions with each other, right? So that's the beauty of it. You can even plug Power BI into this and then build a report to see which of the devices is being ordered most commonly. Are we going over our budget too many times? So on and so forth. Okay, I digress. As you can see, I like talking about all of this stuff, so I'm talking a little too much today. All right. Um, hopefully that has
Because
given you
Power
a quick walkthrough.
Automates,
Sorry,
sorry,
Jyoti, go ahead.
because that's the power of Power Automate. Once we start talking, we just can't stop because I really love this part of it. Definitely, it's like my co-pilot. It's like my assistants.
Yeah, all good. We might be biased, but hopefully some of us are excited about the solution too.
Yeah.
All right. So now comes the big question. Can I start using Power Automate today? I'm sure some of you are thinking about this. Now, licensing is definitely a big question, a big conversation, and Power Platform licensing is a little complex. So I would really recommend if you do want to deep dive into it, get in touch with your Microsoft representatives, and they can arrange a deep dive on the licensing session for you. But maybe as an overview, I can tell you if some of you are using Microsoft 365 and you know what the M365 E5 solution is, your Power Platform licenses are embedded into that. Meaning, if you're already using M365 E5, you might be able to start using Power Automate, Power Apps today with just the existing organization account you have. Or if you're using Dynamics and you're a Dynamics user, you actually have these capabilities embedded in your licensing. So these are things that might already be available to you, but there are things that you can standalone purchase as well. So if you have, let's say, for example, Microsoft 365 E5, E3, which is a different version of that product, you might not be able to tap into this directly. You'll have to probably go out and purchase separate licenses. So licensing, as I said, is a complex conversation. I don't want to go too deep into it, but my hack usually with my customers is go to the Power Platform portal and see if you can create stuff or not. If you can, that means you already have a license. You can just continue working on it. If you can't, then that's your indication of, yeah, maybe I have this solution. I need to build a business case and talk to my manager or talk to someone in my organization to actually see if this is a viable product for us. Can we get a license for me and for me to develop and practice and test? With that, I think I would like to close this our Power Automate conversation by saying, think about the challenges you face in your day-to-day work. What are the things um, that are standardized processes and you can just get them out of the way that can be automated? Think about how you could improve your own productivity. Think about what are the processes in which there's more often than not errors that happen during the process. So human errors we make. Think about things like data entry, which are more mundane tasks, which can probably a system or machine could do for us. So, all of these scenarios, all of the things that you do in your day to day can be built into solutions. And that's your first step to the journey of Power Automate and unlocking all of this potential for ourselves. Okay. Then I've also kept a slide in here for a sample scenario. This is a end-to-end document automation scenario that you can build with different parts of the Microsoft family. um, Emails coming in from your suppliers. Maybe they are sent into a certain Outlook mailbox. From that Outlook mailbox, your Power Automate automatically goes through the emails, checks which ones are from the supplier, checks all of the attachments there, and just moves those attachments into a document storage. You have a front end app that processes those documents, reads those documents, for example, and pulls all of that information to put it into an SQL server. So your app actually has some AI capabilities embedded into it as well. So all of this long chain of process that you see, pretty much all of it can be used or can be automated, can be digitized with Power Platform, which is why we've been talking so much about digital transformation since day one. Why should we even care about digital transformation? Because it's the age of digitization. We pretty much see this in our personal lives as well as in the organizations we work in. So how do we take those steps towards digital transformation? Power Platform can be that key that unlocks this process for us. Okay. Apologies that I've been taking a lot of time to talk about this today. I think whenever I start talking about AI, I get a little excited about it. But yeah, that brings me to the end of the content I had, and we can open up the floor for a bit of a Q&A and see if we had any questions. I did see a couple questions pop in the chat. I will start with those, but I'm also going to enable the mics for all of us. So if anyone wants to ask a question, please be respectful of everyone and just raise your hand, and I will come to you one by one. You can, after that, just unmute yourself and talk to me if you would like to. Right, let's start with the questions we have in the chat first. I saw a couple coming in there. Okay, one of the questions that has been raised, is it possible to send an approval to someone out of the organization or rather a different email address from the organization? Yes, you can, as long as the person is, let's say, a guest in your organization. So it kind of ties back to the Azure Active Directory concepts. If someone is a guest in your organization, they have a recognized presence, even if they are from some other organization. For example, you're working with a partner or a vendor or a supplier. Yes, you can send out approvals and you can involve them in your approval chain as well. Your next question was, can the approval email be customized? Yes, absolutely. It can be customized to a very high extent, including adding HTML components if you would like to. I think the next question we have from Virendra is delegation possible? I'm not sure what way of delegation you're talking about here, but if you'd like to expand on that a little bit more, let me know.
Yeah, like if a task is assigned to someone, but if they are not available, or is there any
Mm,
kind that's
yeah, yeah. Yes, definitely that is possible. So with your approval workflows, you can have things like delegation, or you can have multiple people that can approve, or you need all of those multiple people to approve. So different permutations and combinations of that are possible. Awesome. All right. I think someone has posted, I built a similar app previously, but had problems retrieving product image. How can this be done if you need to tag to thousands of pictures? Great question. I think with images, what I've personally found to be best is having those images stored and leveraging a URL for sort of surfacing them in the front end of the Power App. The URL method really works well rather than you having to store them in session in Power Apps. So see if putting them at a certain storage location where you can point to a URL for those product pictures is helpful. Hopefully that helps. Okay. All right. Now the latest question is, can we have attachments while approving an email? Great question. Yes, you can. As long as your backend data source supports attachments, you can customize these workflows and have attachments too. And I think the final question in the chat is, we have E5 with us. Do we get Copilot capabilities along with this, or do we need to purchase it? Great question. I think some capabilities of Copilot across some products are inbuilt into E5, uh, but some you do have to purchase. So I don't have a very direct answer for you right now. I would say probably just fill out that form. And if you have a specific product in mind that you want to talk about, we can have a deeper dive conversation on the licensing of that. Next question. Attending can be a daunting task to map URL to thousands of pictures. Absolutely. So maybe you can point to a folder and find a way to read from the folder. You can actually do that too, and dump those into a folder somewhere and use the URL for the folder, like a data lake storage, for example. Niche scenario, we might have to discuss more, but that's the suggestions off the top of my head. Any other questions from anyone? Feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat if you're more comfortable doing that. Okay. Seems like
Any
I've
more
been talking a lot.
questions?
Yeah.
Any more questions, folks? Okay, I think time to wind up and wait for
Yeah.
more feedbacks. So, team, as we said earlier, try to fill in this feedback form. Let us deep dive further to get more knowledge and to get the use cases going. Yeah, because that would help you see your knowledge transformation into an actual use case scenario that is a working solution. All right. So thank you so much to our speakers and of course to everyone who have joined the last three sessions. Okay. So I'll be sharing the recording and you will be sharing the feedback form. All right. Okay. So thank you. We will be back sooner with much more updates and with much more Q&As. Thanks a lot, Sana.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much for your
Thanks,
contribution.
Jyoti.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.